Friends, it is Wednesday, and that means it is Ask a Flower Farmer Day. It is your friend Lisa Mason Ziegler, and hey, glad you guys are joining me here today. I'm in a different spot. I'm actually standing up against a wall in my office so that Tucker can be in the room with me, and I can see that the light's not quite as good, but y'all know what I look like, right? So, and I'm standing, I'll just give y'all a little peek. Several years ago on my birthday, Suzanne, my sister, gave me this is a plaque. That's the cover of Cool Flower, not really the cover. Then there was the Easy Cut Flower Garden, which was my first little book that's no longer available. And then Vegetables, Love Flowers down there. She and I and our sister-in-law, who's also involved in the business, went to one of those places, you know, where you send them your artwork and then you go in and paint. We had this the best time. Anyway. That's what sitting behind me. So friends, for anyone that hasn't heard, this coming weekend, which we know is big weekend because it's Mother's Day, right? But for us, it's even bigger than that because on Saturday, May 7th, we are doing our once a year open farm, which we thought we were not going to be able to do an open farm at all this year because of a construction project on my home, but it got so delayed that we're just going for it. There's a little mess there, but it's not nearly as bad as we thought. So this Saturday was the only Saturday, and we are just so humbled with so many people coming from such long distances to come and see my little garden and farm, and we're just thrilled. So the garden is open, and then the warehouse is also open, which is about 4 miles away. We're in southeastern Virginia in Newport News, and if you want more information, if you're thinking about coming, if you go to our website, thegardenersworkshop.com, right on the home page is the link to a page that has hotels, other attractions. I mean, we're right here at Busch Gardens, Colonial Williamsburg, Yorktown. That's all within 30 minutes of us. So it's a great family weekend, and you can make a pit stop at the farm and the warehouse and do some in-person shopping. We would totally and completely love to welcome you here. And if you haven't heard, Dave Dowling's even coming down. He will arrive at the farm at 9 o'clock. It's like he's a superstar, right? He's going to walk in at 9, an hour after the tour starts. And our peonies are doing their thing. So Dave will have a lot to talk about, and it'll be great for people to pick his brain. We just love, so many of our students came last year, and we got some great images, and we're hoping to replay that all again this year. And of course, if you're a Tucker fan, my golden retriever, Tucker will be there with his sidekick, Ellen. And, so they'll be camped out underneath the magnolia tree next to the Lenten roses for you to have a little visit with him. And I'm totally loving y'all that you're putting the sunflower emoji. If you don't know what that's all about, folks identify themselves as one of our online course students by putting the sunflower emoji. So thank you so much for doing that, because that helps other people to know that maybe they could reach out to you and say, like, what is the real deal about those online courses, right? So I also want to highlight two things. One is, if you haven't seen it, I launched last week for a temporary kit that's available. It's called the 50-Foot Cutting Garden to Go. It is the seeds, the netting, the flower food, and something else. Oh. Not only the flower food, but the pre-treatment, which is so important with sunflowers and zinnias, which we call them members of the Dirty Dozen flowers because they just pollute the water so much. Anyway, we just started our seeds. I'm going to plant the same garden on the farm, the 50-foot. It's a mix of zinnias, sunflowers for you to succession plant, Gumphrina, the basil. What else, Rhonda? Zinnias, sunflowers, Gumphrina, basil. She's going to tell us. There's one or two other things. Anyway, it's everything in there. It's $100. It's $25 off, I think, if you buy all the stuff individually. And then it's got the instructions, my tips on planting it and growing it and starting inside. You can start inside or plant it out in the garden. However, I have never planted Gumphrina seed out in the garden. It's pretty hardy. It probably would work, but we recommend you transplant them. Anyway, so that's a lot of fun.
Giant marigolds.
Oh, and giant marigolds. I knew there was another.
And Benary's lime green.
and Benary's lime green. So it's like the workhorses of our cutting garden. So it'd be a great way to test the waters, provide a bunch of gifting bouquets for you this season. So check it out. Just go to the website, put kit in, and it'll come up. And friends, did y'all see this? Better Homes and Garden. Cosmos on the cover by our friends from Adam O'Neill and his farm. I'm just looking for the page. I didn't want to kill their name. And I'm just, I know exactly. Here we go. Here we go. So it is, I'm the worst, y'all. I didn't plan on, so Pepper Harrows. It is Adam and Jennifer O'Neill. Our good friend Marty Ross is the garden writer. She's the one that's gotten us in magazines. She did this article, and it's really super. And if you're coming to the farm this weekend, I have like all 14 of the cosmos that we sell planted in the garden. I mean, of course, they're only like 10 inches tall. But check this out, and it's just always wonderful when a flower farmer makes the press. So check that out. All right, so you know the score. If you want me to answer a question, just post it down below in the little bubble with the question mark. That way I don't have to scroll through all the names and perhaps miss your question. So let's have a look. All right, so let's look at the first one. Why are my little transplants wilting and dying after planting them in plastic, black side up? I hardened them off several days before planting. That could really be from a lot of different things. First off, black side up. We only do that when it's going to be like under 80 or 85 degrees at the highest in the afternoon, because you will very quickly cook small transplants. Sometimes maybe they were too immature. I don't know what your watering situation was, but I would say to you, it sounds like if you're having it across the board of many different types of transplants, you may have baked them. And so that is, and I have cooked more than my share, y'all. I totally underestimate how hot that black side up, which is the benefit of it early in the season. So from here on out, we only do gray side up. Our first planting, which is in the ground pretty much, is black side up. But yeah, I'm afraid that may have cooked them. You can shade them. I've posted pictures. If I haven't, I will be in the next coming days, how I make half moon low tunnels to shade them from the hot afternoon sun. So be on the lookout for that. And I'm so sorry it happened. I have cooked so many beds of transplants in my lifetime. I totally understand. Hi, from Utah. I have apricot lemonade cosmos popping up, reseeded from last year. Should I let them stay, or do I need to transplant to a different bed? No, for sure. I would leave them where they are. I mean, they reseeded. They're happy there. I know you're thinking about disease issues. I don't really think of any disease-strong issues with cosmos. But in a reseeding bed, I don't even think about that much. So good for you. We have all the cosmos planted, and we're so stoked. And I am also growing lemonade. So good luck to you. And no, I would leave them. I would thin them to about 4 to 6 inches apart after they get a little bit of size on them. Once you make sure that they're all going to survive, I would definitely thin them to 4 to 6 inches apart. They look good now, but once they get bigger, they'll just become a tangled mess. All right. Sisters in the Garden. Oh, that's wrong. Here it is. Kristen asks, what does it mean when bottom leaves of snapdragons are yellowing? Is this normal, or does it indicate something else? That could be a couple of things. That can be nutrition, or it can be overwatering. And I don't know how long they've been in your what does it mean? So I'm not sure if they're planted in the garden or indoors or outdoors. Sometimes overwatering in a tray can definitely do that. And the nutrition would be my next thing. So if you feel like you're not overwatering, it's not super wet, then I would definitely use the weekly type of product. Like we use Neptune seaweed fish. And do it according to directions weekly and see if that does it. A lot of times, you know, y'all, my snapdragons looked so horrible coming out of winter this year. I mean, we lost stuff because we had such a wet winter. But I am amazed. I can't wait to show people this weekend. I mean, Bobo and I stood at the bed and talked about ripping it out just 6-8 weeks ago. They're beautiful now. So a lot of times, if you can just get them through the bump, if they were just planted or if they're in a tray, get them out in the garden, and just be sure they're getting enough nutrition. So this one is, I wish I could get this a little bit higher so I could read these better. My soil block plants seem to be stalling and not growing anymore. Tips for getting them to grow, please. They get consistent light and water. So the number one problem, I would say, I can't say that. There's 2 or 3 really significant issues. One of them is overwatering. The plants need to go from wet to dry in that 24-hour period. That's just a natural evolution, right? Also, how old are they? Are they stalling because they just need to be planted outside? And then the other thing is the air temperature. Even cool season flowers like cool flowers need above 70 degrees to grow vegetatively, which also helps them to dry out on a regular basis. So feeding weekly with a liquid organic fertilizer, which just means it's not super strong and isn't going to burn your stuff. Follow the directions on the bottle for a house plant is what I do. Warm air temps, and to not let it, and they are soil blocks, do not let water sit in that tray. And those blocks should be dry the next morning. Hope that helps. Is it possible to pack soil black too tight, hard, dense? I'm not sure what your question is, but surely if you're talking about packing the blocker, the blocking mix can be you can pack it in there so tight, and depending on what the components are that you use, because they can surely vary, you can pack it too tight, but you do want it. Interesting, this just happened last night. So we have a ton of trays out on our carport. It's like wall to wall. And we got a rainstorm last night at about 9 o'clock, and I laid in the bed and thought, gosh, I hope the trays at the head of the carport, where if the wind's blowing the right way, it'll water the trays, which of course they're soil blocks. I don't want that to happen, right? Well, it happened. But I am pleased to report to you that even though the trays had a ½ inch of water in them this morning when I went out there, the blocks didn't dissolve. All about your blocking mix, the recipe that holds it all together. You want it to be not loose, but airy, but well packed. And y'all, okay. All right, let's see what else we got here. Y'all stand by just a second. I put my do not disturb on, but the alarms keep going off. Anyway, I just took them down. All right, let's see what our next question is. Does the same thing apply to seeds in soil blocks about the soil in soil cells? That would be like a plug tray. About the soil drying out over a 24-hour period. I would definitely say yes. Think about it. Plants' roots breathe. Okay? So they shouldn't be sitting in water, but for a very short period of time as the water is either absorbed or dissipates, or however the water goes. For soil blocks in a tray, that's why air temperature is just so significant. I find so many people are trying to grow plants in really cool conditions, like in a garage or that kind of setting, and that just is not conducive to vegetative growth, right? And when stuff is growing actively, it'll suck those blocks dry. Well, that same thing, that's part of the issue that I find between soil blocks and cell packs. It's because soil blocks are not in a container. It is so much easier for those plants to breathe. In a cell, you have to really be sure you're using the right type of soil that is air and water can just really freely move through there, and it drains really well. But yes, I would say the same principle applies. Moon Garden Design. I've handled gnats in the seed room, but this is the first year I've had aphids. What's bringing the aphids in? I haven't changed anything with the soil blocking recipe method. That's a really good question. You know, it's so funny to me that how pests can just show up out of nowhere, right? So if you do have an aphid problem, I will say I've never had to deal with that. I would definitely search engine that on how to handle an aphid outbreak on transplants in a closed-in growing area. But I would say I would try to get them outdoors as soon as you can and do a lot of hand squishing. That's what I would personally do, is just go along and squish them on the plant, leave them. I mean, who cares whether they're there as long as they're not, doing damage. Sometimes one of the things that aphids love is fleshy new growth. So out in the garden, I know that we say you can surely over-fertilize and really encourage aphids. So be sure maybe you're not ODing the plants, or maybe cut back on your fertilization a little bit. So give that a try. But I would definitely do a search engine, and that'd be something I'd ask my extension agent. So this one is the Mindful Garden, Zone 3. My Iceland poppy seedling leaves are yellowing and unhappy. Any tips? They're about ready to go outside. I have never started poppies indoors. We always direct seed them, and this is one of the issues. They are not happy inside. It's mostly about temperatures, but I will tell you that they're kind of puny little seedlings. Even out in the garden, when they're really happy, they go through a stage. So I would say I would get them outside ASAP, as soon as possible, because yellowing could be overwatering, nutrition, but I would guess with poppies may even be temperatures. It may be too warm in their form, because poppies are really, that's one of the first flowers to bloom in our garden back in March typically. So that's what I would do. Is it possible for eat cosmos flowers? I'm sorry, I don't get your question. I think there's a missing word. When do you sow snaps in soil blocks for fall? August, first frost for me is October 25th. When to sow Sweet William in fall? September. So it's all about your frost dates, right? And I have mentioned so many times that we've kind of tweaked our fall planting dates because fall weather just seems to go on longer than it ever used to, meaning it doesn't get cold like it used to. And with transplants, you have a lot of wiggle room. So typically, you should have a transplant ready to go in the ground 6 to 8 weeks before your first fall frost. We now go more 4 to 6 weeks, and we start our transplants typically 4 weeks before it's time to plant them, if that translates for you there. And again, you have so much wiggle room with transplants because all the germinating and growing goes on indoors. You can put them out in the garden and hoop and cover them to get them established in cold conditions if it all of a sudden gets cold. So you can just really have more wiggle room, but hopefully that helps. That flower farm, would you transplant, let's see here, would you transplant and seed before or after a rain? I'm trying to figure out the best time for me to transplant. First time flower farmer. Well, first off, welcome aboard. You've come to the right place. So if I am transplanting 100%, I would transplant before the rain. We just did that twice in the last couple of weeks. So for sure, if your beds are ready, get transplants in to let the rain water them. There is no water like rain from the sky. So for sure. For seeding, my question is also yes. However, if it's going to be a gully washer, then I might hold back from sowing seeds in the garden. But yes, I would definitely do that. I would definitely plant and make the best use of the rain. Y'all, sorry, I get all tied up reading ahead of me. I direct sowed Love in a Mist, and about 75% took, which I guess that means that 75% germinated. Good for you. That's pretty good. I mean, direct sowing, until you really get it down, it can be kind of iffy for a lot of people. So I would say 75% is definitely a win. That's why we oversow, y'all. You have to thin. You have to overplant to thin, because too many variables out in the garden that you don't have control of. Would it be okay to intermix with Ami? I'm not sure what that means. Would it be okay? I mean, there is nothing wrong with planting different cool flowers. So in a self-appointed, I'm not sure if that was the person that just asked about the Nigella. I try to focus, back when I was a kind of a small grower, or going from a gardener to a grower, I had an area of my garden that I called the self-appointed garden. It's where all those things were that reseeded very strongly. That would have been Ami Magus, Bells of Ireland, Nigella, Rudbeckias, Buplurum, poppies. So they were all intermixed. That is definitely not the way that a commercial grower can do it, because I quickly had to give that up. It is almost impossible to maintain it. But sure, you can mix those. Having trouble with my globe amaranth, that is Gumphrena, germinating. Do you not cover the seed at all? And to be honest, I would have to look at what the seed package says. We just started a boatload of Gumphrena. And Bobo is sowing the seeds. So I do not have firsthand. I don't memorize all that stuff. So you can go to our website. All of our seeds on the store, the description gives you that kind of information. So that's where I would go and look. What are the easiest to grow coxcomb snapdragons? What are the easiest to grow? Coxcomb snapdragons, fever, few, and filler. I'm not sure I understand that question. Sorry, Denise, I don't understand what that means. I mean, I don't know if you're asking for certain varieties, because they really we lump them all together. And again, the easiest to grow, once you master how to start them from seed and when to plant them and to care for them, meaning netting and that kind of thing, I kind of feel like they're all easy to grow. Do you direct sow Celosia coxcomb status? If so, any tips? No, I do not. I do not direct sow any warm season seed at all. The only time I direct sow is in the fall for a handful of cool flowers that really don't do well starting indoors. As commercial growers, it's easier and you have better success when you plant transplants by a long shot, and it is so much less labor. So no, I do not do that. Do you pinch half of your straw flower crop or all? That is such a great question, because guess what I did yesterday? I do pinch 50%. And yesterday I was getting ready to net one of the beds of straw flowers, or actually I netted all of them. But one of them, they were already like 18 inches tall. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to cut this side of the bed. We'd plant 4 rows. So I cut one whole side of the bed down so that people could see it this weekend. And we did the same exact thing last year. And while those that I pinched back, cut, their stems were not as tall as the unpinched, they were definitely tall enough. They were still 36 inches tall. Who needs anything taller than that, right? But I love those early blooms. Several of them had blooms on them. Not blooms, but buds. So I want the early buds for blooms, and I want the early branching. So yeah, you can never, ever, ever have enough straw flowers. That is my motto these days. On the Fence Flower Farm, do you use flat beds or just raised? I feel the raised beds would dry out faster. So that's a really good question. We always do raised beds. And whenever we have made the mistake and not used raised beds, which I've actually got one bed this year on our farm that's suffering from this, when, first off, you need to build your soil so that they don't dry out so fast. And of course, you're going to use either mulch or mulch film like Bio 360 or plastic or whatever you use. And all of that helps to retain moisture. You can water more, but let me just tell you, when you have a wet winter like we did this year, we lost a lot of our status. We lost part of our Lysianthus, and it was all from wet feet. It was not a cold winter. It was wet conditions, and there is nothing you can do to break that cycle except lift your beds. Raised beds warm up faster, they drain better, gives you great opportunity to just add, put compost down and plant through it. Put more compost down, in the next season, and, you just can build your beds and you just build great soil. So I am 100%, I can convince myself, because we can't make a bed for whatever reason, weather, broken equipment, I'll say, well, we'll just go ahead and plant it. I am always sorry, always sorry. So that's why we do it, because I have pretty much built my business on having options. And when you don't raise a bed, you have no options but to stand there and watch your stuff literally die in front of you. And so for me, I've just learned through the years, I always try to give myself all the options I can. Do you net your bupleurum? Yes, for 100%. Now, there have always been times that I have not netted something because we just didn't get to it. Like, for instance, that straw flowers yesterday that I netted. If I had waited enough, if this open farm would not be taking place this weekend, which spurred me to get my buns out there and take care of business, I would have not been able to really net that effectively without pinching it all back. So we definitely miss netting occasionally, particularly when we were in high production. It would be nothing. Half of our zinnia beds would be netted. Only, a bed here or there would get missed. And I was here to tell you, it's just like raised beds. We would lose flowers, a lot of flowers. All it takes is one 10-minute torrential downpour when they're just about ready to set heads, and they just lay down, and there is no saving them. There's just nothing you can do. It creates more labor, more work, less income. So I net just about anything that goes over 20 to 24 inches tall. Yeah. We don't net sunflowers now because we planted so many and so often. That's kind of what we did during high production, that we couldn't net them, but we took the risk. And I knew we were going to lose sunflowers. We still do to today, So yeah, you can just count on that I pretty much net everything. Doesn't always happen, but that's the intention. So, artistic timbers. When do you know your soil blocks are ready to go in the ground? That's a really great question. I typically say, I don't tell you how old because we all grow at different rates. But a 3 to 5 inch transplant is what you are looking for. And that just gives them enough substance that they can hold their own out there. I like planting a hardy little healthy plant. If you have some that are suffering and you think you're on the edge, get them outdoors. But yeah, 3 to 5 inches is the way to go. We're coming in for a landing, all. So have you uncovered your sunflowers now that it's 80s during the day? Yeah, I did. And our sunflowers, I am getting messages. It is all over social media of people in cold zones, y'all, that did the early birds, that really did the job, and they've all got sunflowers for Mother's Day. Many of them, not everybody, but many people. We did take our covers off probably like a week and a half ago, and I should have left it on. But yeah, we're going to have blooms, but they aren't the big, great, beautiful sunflowers like you get in the middle of summer. But yes, ours are uncovered. But I will tell you that sunflowers do really good under cover, even when it's hot outside. If you're trying to push them along early in the season like this. But for sure, the early bird sunflower project is a huge success. So this will be my last question. It's 12 o'clock. At what point do you put zinnia seedlings in the garden? So zinnias are a warm season, tender annual, right? And the general rule is once nighttime, this has nothing to do with daytime temperatures, friends. Nighttime temperatures are 65 degrees and above. and holding for the next 2 weeks. It's all about the nighttime temperatures. If you're going to take special steps like we do, using black film on beds and hoop and row cover your transplants, then you can plant them earlier. We try to get them in when nighttime is even going down to 50. But they're covered and protected, right? And we plant zinnias. We're on the verge. 2 to 3 weeks old. I think Christine may be planting some tomorrow to have them in the ground for our open house this weekend. But 2 to 3 weeks old, and they're about this tall, and they're just super gorgeous. They do so well when they're short and stocky, y'all. They just do so very, very well. So friends, that's the last question I have today. It is lunchtime here, and I invite you to join me over on Clubhouse today. I have a special guest, Wanda of Fox Hollow Peony. She's an Alaskan peony grower, is going to be talking to us about peony harvest. I mean, who better to tell you than somebody that grows 99% peonies, right? So Clubhouse is just another social media app. You just download the app, join Clubhouse, and then join my flower farming club, and that'll ding you, and we go live at 1 o'clock, and you'll be able to ask Wanda. We'll talk. She and I will talk for about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll be taking questions just like this, except you can actually come up and ask her live. They won't see you, but they'll hear your voice. So that'll be a great opportunity. She ships peonies. Alaskan peonies, if you didn't know this, don't bloom until like July. So they are a great way for if you're a farmer florist or a designer, or to let your people know they can ship in peonies from Alaska later in the summer, when people down here, we don't have them anymore, right? Ours are long gone. So join me over on Clubhouse. I would love to see you at the farm this weekend, or at the warehouse. So the farm is open 8 to 12, and that's Eastern time. The warehouse is open from 10 to 2. It is just a fun free-for-all here, folks. And come and see Dave and the team, and everybody will be here, except Bobo won't be here. She had another obligation. It's her daughter's birthday. I guess we can let her go for that, right? And so till we meet again, friends, ciao.